Hello, welcome to Season 9 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. The theme of this season is 100 Years of Horror. We're going to watch two horror movies from every decade, from 1920 to 2020, in chronological order. We want to see where horror came from, how it's changed, and maybe even make some predictions about where it's going. If you want to see the full list of movies we'll be reviewing this season and follow along, then check out our website at thehorrific.com. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. I have heard people talk about this movie for years and years and years, and I don't know why I didn't ever watch it, but I didn't, and I also now realize I knew absolutely nothing about it other than what the main character looked like. Did you have any experience with this one before?
No, I have a bud that I work with, and he is a really big David Lynch fan. So like when we were going through the Esquire list and it was the Twin Peaks movie, like I was asking him if he had it, to try to find it because we couldn't watch that anyway. And he mentioned about how much he likes the films and stuff. So I talked to him about it. But I had no idea before talking to my bud, about this movie. Like, it was the same thing. Like, I saw the picture, and I didn't even know what it was about.
I'm curious, what was his impression of it?
Well, just also real quick, I still don't know what it's about, but,
Same.
He basically said that this is how a lot of his work is, that he writes and directs, and you almost have to watch it all to kind of understand it. And I was like, well, I don't have that time. Could you just explain it to me?
Yeah.
And he said it's left up to your interpretation.
I would agree.
Yeah, and I said that's a very lazy answer.
Yeah.
But I also agree.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, cool. I will introduce it, then you can do your fun facts, and then we will get into the surrealist details. In 1977, Libra Films brought us Eraserhead, an experimental body horror film written, directed, and produced by David Lynch. This movie tells the story of a guy named Henry whose girlfriend has a mutant baby that is presumably his, and then they live together and everything is creepy. Though one critic called Eraserhead murkily pretentious shortly after its release, it has developed and sustained a strong cult following over the years. In 2004, it was added to the National Film Archive by the Library of Congress, indicating its cultural relevance. This movie can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video.
And also HBO Max.
Oh, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Dang it.
Oh, yes. HBO Max. Here's the thing, too. I wanted to tell you, I got an app now that's called Real Good, REL Good. And you can search for movies, and you can put, like, what you have, like Netflix or anything. So I just highlighted them all, and it'll tell you what that movie's on. It's the best thing I've ever experienced in my entire life.
Yeah, thanks for waiting until after I'd already paid to watch this movie to tell me that.
You're welcome.
What did you learn about this movie?
I learned that it's on HBO Max, and there's this really cool app. So supposedly this movie, there's a lot of like people who will explain this. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting about this film was the fan theories that they have. And they're just completely different. So it does really leave it up to it's your interpretation, right, of this film. But one of the things that David Lynch talked about in the book Catching the Big Fish, he says that it's his most spiritual film or movie that he's ever created. And basically, he was saying, I was looking for a key to unlock what the sequences were saying. Of course, I understood some of it, but I didn't know the thing that pulled it all together, and it was a struggle. He ended up getting out his Bible and started reading, and one day he read a sentence, and I closed the Bible, and I closed the Bible because that's what it was, that's what it is. And then I saw the thing as a whole, and it fulfilled the vision for me 100%. He doesn't tell you what the verse was. He doesn't tell you, any of that. But he said he read the Bible, and that's what made sense. And I believe it a little bit from the song that's sung in the film.
Yeah.
But now a huge theory about this film is that it's based off of real life for David Lynch. He had a daughter, I think her name was Jennifer, and she was born with really bad club feet.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they said it was like really bad. It was unplanned pregnancy with his first wife, and the baby had club feet. Critics were quick to draw the conclusions that Lynch was working out of his own anxieties of the new father with Eraserhead. His daughter, however, has always talked about, I was born with club feet, and people have made insinuations about it because the baby in Eraserhead was deformed. Jennifer said in an interview, but David, the writer, creator, doesn't credit that directly as where Eraserhead comes from. So, could be, could not be, but his daughter says it's not.
I'd say that too if I didn't want it to be about me.
Oh, yeah, same. I apologize, there's actually a little bit more. David offered similar thoughts in an interview from Lynch on Lynch, and it's obviously, since a person is alive and they're noticing things around them, ideas are going to come, he said. But that would mean there'd be 100 million Eraserhead stories out there. Everybody has a kid and they make Eraserhead? ? That's ridiculous. It's not just that, it's a million other things. Whatever. So the baby in here also, like, there's theories on what it actually was, and David Lynch won't tell you. I thought it just looked like a puppet, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But people were thinking it looked like a real lamb head or calf head or whatever. But
I said turtle with no shell.
That's actually a good call. Yeah. But supposedly he also dissected a cat for the research of this. It was already dead, but he wanted to look at the dead cat's membranes, hair, and skin. It was apparently a texture thing. So he's obviously killed some people. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And the last fact. So the one thing I'm not gonna say last fact. So the fun fact about this is, there's, in any community with films or bands or whatever, you always have like your small little community of actors, and so that's why you have like the Rat Pack or like Seth Rogen's like crew that he'll film with, James Franco and all those guys. Sure. Like they kind of come up together and they've been working together. What's crazy is Sissy Spacek, who, really famous actress, she was Jack Fisk's girlfriend, and she was actually on the set just kind of hanging out during this. And then like Terrence Malick, an Oklahoma, he actually tried to help raise funding for this movie because like no one basically would, and it was so bad that David Lynch actually made $48 a month or a week delivering papers to help fund while he was making this film. And the thing is his route was actually at night, and they filmed majority of this at night, and so like they would literally have to take a break so he could finish filming. Now it also took 5 years to complete the film, from what I was reading, and basically it was saying like there's a scene where the main guy Henry opens the door. From when he gets to the door to when he opens it, he actually ages 18 months because that's how long it took for them to get back to recording. And wow. Henry, the actual actor who played Henry, he actually legit kept that frizzy hair for the 5 years as well.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some dedication.
Right. Which was, yeah, like you said, extreme dedication. And then, you have multiple directors and actors and stuff who love this film, even back then, even though it had terrible ratings to start off with. One that I thought was really interesting was Mel Brooks. It's, he loved the movie so much that was the reason why he asked David Lynch to direct The Elephant Man. Because he wanted, I guess, the style. And then, Stanley Kubrick, which is, he's out there anyway, but, he's often said this is his favorite film that's ever been made. So, those are the facts that I have about Eraserhead.
So I think an optimist would probably say that this movie was weird for the sake of being weird, and it pulled that off exceptionally well. A pessimist might say that this movie was really far up its own ass.
Right. Yeah. That's what I kind of struggle with.
Yeah, I feel like the formula for it was creepy sound effects and zooming in on things. And, like, it definitely was creepy the whole way through. But there's an episode of The Office where I think it's on Halloween, and Gabe brings in a movie and he calls it like the theater of the absurd, where you don't even have the comforting strand of a narrative to hold your hand or something like that. And I feel like this one kind of was going for that. And I don't know, man, had I seen this like in high school, it might have hit different, but I feel like now as a grizzled old man, I just didn't really connect. Like I get it. I get what he was trying to do here, but it was not really my jam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get that, and that's fair. I absolutely love this movie.
Good.
No, just kidding. That's a lie. I will say the terrifying aspect of this film, the horror of this film, is just the fact of like a soon-to-be dad watching a movie.
Oh, I'm sure.
Where a dad has a baby that's like comes out looking like that. Like that was like more so kind of terrifying, but also at the same time I was kind of pissed off at myself for like not doing better research, because my wife, who is having a kid, is watching these with us, and and so she wasn't luckily paying attention, so we got away with it. But yeah, I think it was one of those things. Like I struggle a lot with not even necessarily cult films, but just films that I feel like everyone tells you is like good, and like it's like, do you actually think it is, or are you cool because because you're saying it is?
Well, and it's one where I feel like had we been there at the theater in 1977 and this happened, it would have just been like, holy crap, what did we just see? Mm-hmm. And like, I am so unsettled and confused. But now, there have been 50 years of filmmaking since then that we've seen, and a lot of, I think, these similar elements have been done. I mean, there were a lot of parts about this that were not all that dissimilar from your favorite Under the Skin. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea of like the more kind of independent, moody, ambient, creepy movie is a thing that's been done a bunch of times. So it's not like you went and saw this and you're like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. This is so wild. Like, it blows my mind that someone could make a movie like this in, 2021. So, and again, maybe if, so this has got me on like a streak of self-examination, because I'm like, would I have loved this movie if I saw it in high school? And I kind of think back to some other stuff I watched at the time, like Memento. Like, I remember that movie blew my mind at the time, because it was just like, it just showed the whole thing backwards. You can't do that. How did they come up with that idea? Like, everything about it's so crazy. And I think that movie holds up and is still good today. But then I think about something like Fight Club. And rewatching that movie, I still enjoy it, but there is a lot of just like, somebody took Intro to Philosophy, had like one semester of it, and decided to write a screenplay, like just that. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Like, here's a very, very watered down version of nihilism that feeds into the same sentiment that will eventually become incels, but whatever. But there was a lot of like enjoyable parts of that movie and everything, but it just like, if I saw it now, it wouldn't blow my mind like it did back then, and like it was him the whole time. Like, that's been done so many times at this point. Like, there's no shock factor. Like, it wouldn't even be a surprise today. And so I don't know. I don't know where I would land on this movie, but it was not, and maybe it's because I went into it with really high expectations, but I just, it never really grabbed me. It never really had me asking what comes next. It was just sort of a low amplitude creepiness through the whole thing.
Yeah, maybe it's one of these films that, or one of those films that you have to like be in the right mood for or something. I don't know. I definitely was not. And I watched it multiple times for the record because I didn't really pay attention too much the first time. And each time it was just like, I don't know. You know, I've touched base on like sometimes it's nice to have your hand held. And this would have been nice to at least have some sort of idea, like, instead it's like all these metaphors and stuff like this, stuff like that. And it's like, my main beef with this whole film though is just considering it a horror film, because I am that dumb guy that I just, you know the style of horror I like, but it's the straightforward, you know, like, this guy can't die kind of thing, and he keeps coming for you, or you're stuck in this house and this guy's trying to come in and kill you or whatever. And it's like, I feel like this will be my argument until the end of days of like, don't just make like a random ass film and have like some creepy aspects and then call it a horror film. Like, that's just not, I mean, you might as well, if you want to see like weird images, just like go to Reddit, and like some of those Reddit, you know, subreddits out there are like incredibly terrible stuff. I don't even know if it's legal, but anyway, it's, you know, it's just, I don't know, not that for me. And if I'm at this point in my life where I don't want to have to like figure out what this movie's about, like I pretty much know what my life's about at this point. And I'm not looking for those answers.
I had that same thought, because there was a time when it was like, when you're questioning who you are and what you want to be and what your place is in society and life and everything else, and you're just like searching for meaning, and then you see something like this and it gives you a lot of space that you can kind of like project your own stuff into it. I feel like you would form a lot more of a connection with it than now that I'm in like my mid-30s and married and putting on weight, you know, like, right. It's like, I'm who I am. Like, this is where I'm going to be. And, you know, most of the questions are answered, and it just, you know, I could see, like, you could say, well, you know, there's a lot of metaphor, there's a lot of symbolism, there's a lot of, you know, the soundtrack and the audio and sound effects and everything else are creating like this world that is very like mechanical and very like non-personal, and Henry feels very disconnected from other people, and even when he tries to open up to them, they end up, you know, like betraying him, or it's not a real connection or whatever, and all this. And it's just like, but I didn't take anything away from that. I mean, I've learned a lot of life lessons already. I don't need them in symbolic movie form to hit home, I guess.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think like there's no real like definition, or there's no real like explanation of what makes a film like a cult hit, or you know, something like that. And it's, you know, I still firmly believe that people will say that they like this film without understanding a lick of it, because this is you're edgy, you like the film and stuff. It's like, I don't have to do that. I'll be honest with you. Like, it's not like we're getting paid by sponsors for this, you know, to do this. And it's like, you're here to listen to our opinions. And my opinion is, I got 0 out of watching this, other than like, I thought the filmmaking, like some of the shots were cool, you know? But it's like, I didn't necessarily get anything out of this other than, I don't know. And also my thing too, if I'm gonna, you know, I would rather like listen to music where I try to interpret those lyrics, because it's a 3-4 minute ordeal. This was an hour and a half of trying to figure out where my ass was, and I couldn't find it with either hand.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point about like people say they like it just to like seem cool or whatever, I don't know that that's necessarily true. Like I mean, some people obviously do, but I think there are probably some people too that are just like, they like how weird it is. And that it's just like unlike anything else that they've seen. And especially in like the 70s, I would imagine a bunch of people fell into that. And it's, I am a fan of this thing because it is so outside the mainstream and so outside of normal. And for like someone to go through everything that he went through to still make this movie, like that's admirable. And, I definitely I love some of those early Sunset Rubdown and Frog Eyes albums that a lot of people find just like straight unlistenable. Mm-hmm. And I like a lot of what's going on like musically and everything, but also just how out there it seemed at the time is a thing that just really like caught my attention and like I created a connection with, and I listened to it a lot because it was almost just like mesmerizing how sort of outside the rules it seemed like they were on those albums. Mm-hmm. And so I can see people having like a similar connection with this movie, but it's just like coming back to it now after, half a century of artistic filmmaking and other stuff that I've seen that is sort of in the same vein. It wasn't the same experience for me.
Yeah.
Please, Casper, please still sponsor us.
So I was going through trying to figure out what this is even about just as part of the facts, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of getting frustrated with some of the responses on there, or some of the people's explanation, and it's, it's up to your interpretation. I still feel like that is pretty lazy, like a lazy thing. But just the way that I was seeing people covet this movie, it just didn't make sense to me. And I get that I am a simple person. I like simple things, movie, not even just horror movies, my Westerns or, whatever, if I'm reading a book or just whatever, that's how it is for me. And I don't, and my whole point with this is I don't give a shit what other people like film wise or music or movies. And as a musician, I don't think I have anything that I love so much that I'm willing to necessarily actually insult someone about that you don't. It's like, oh, you don't like, whoever, insert whatever obscure band, that I like.
See, I have no problem with that. I judge people all the time. And I think one reason I have a hard time making new friends is because I just disqualify people so quickly based on their music choices.
Well, that's also because that's what I've trained you to do, so you don't make new friends without me.
Is that what that was all about?
Yeah, subliminal messages,
all these years.
Yeah. But my main thing is just it's just crazy to me. It's interesting to see I gotta love these guys because this is, or I love this movie, and if you don't, you're dumb and you don't understand it, and it's or also, it may just not have been a good film. It was a miss for me. I didn't consider it horror film personally, and also it's difficult when there's no dialogue for the first 20 minutes of the film, and there's no dialogue for the last 30 minutes of the film. Yeah. Now, this movie only had 22 pages for the script.
I believe that.
And
yeah, I had in my notes, there was one part, because I watch everything for the most part with subtitles on, and on my screen, for this one, at least on the Amazon Prime Video player, it does brackets around sound effects. So at one point on the same screen, it said in brackets, train rumbling, in brackets, wind blowing, in brackets, baby crying, all at the same time, one stacked on top of the other. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I could have just taken a picture of this and stared at it for an hour.
Yeah.
It had mostly the same experience.
Yeah.
But no, I did read some interesting stuff after the fact that David Lynch was very, very involved with the sound on it, both the music, but also all the sound effects and stuff. And that was definitely a huge focus of the movie and a big part of creating the experience of it. I think if you watch this movie on mute, it would be a very, very different experience, even though there wasn't a lot of dialogue, which is kind of weird. But my favorite part of the whole thing was the lady in the radiator, which according to Wikipedia is the name of the character, is singing "In Heaven Everything Is Fine." And I did not know that Working on Leaving the Living by Modest Mouse was referencing this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just kind of a cool, like, oh yeah, I can connect that back to something I like.
Yeah.
And I think that that's from their best album, which is called Building Nothing Out of Something. And so then that inspired me to go listen to that. And that was a positive outcome.
Yeah, I got a new beef with Modest Mouse, but we'll save that for another podcast one day.
Okay. Modest Mouse, 3-6 Mafia. There's a long list.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so there was the scene where the worm erupts from Henry's body and sends his head flying, and it ends up landing on the ground outside, and then a kid picks it up and carries it to an office, and then they drill a core sample out of his head and use it for erasers on pencils. And that's why the movie's called Eraserhead.
Yeah.
I had kind of wondered if there was like some larger significance or some kind of thing that was going to happen in the dialogue. It's like, no, there's just one real weird scene where they literally use his head to make erasers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I could see people listening to The Wall and having this movie on in the background.
Yeah, I could see that. At least you'd hear something good in the background.
Yeah.
Goodness, give you something to think about.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I didn't even know going into this podcast what we'd even be able to necessarily talk about. Because I could sit here, I think, and spend the whole time asking questions of like, who was the radiator lady and why did she have weird cheeks?
Yep.
And, who was the neighbor and the planet and just all that stuff. And it's like, you know what? As busy as I am, if I have to ask these things, I don't necessarily care anymore.
The guy with the levers that I think it seemed like they kind of forgot about. And then I really thought the lady in the radiator was Mary. And I thought that was like his vision of her or something. I was like waiting for that to come back around, but no, it was just a lady in the radiator.
And then like the chickens that moved and had whatever fluid coming out of them for like an awkward amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't. It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And like that bean he got in the mail that didn't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, like what was that about?
Yeah. I'll tell you what it wasn't. It wasn't really scary.
No. There's no scare in this film.
Yep. Did you like it more than Under the Skin?
I would watch this movie every single day for the rest of my life, just for the chance to not have to watch Under the Skin.
Okay. It's like if there's ever a day where you don't watch this movie, you have to watch Under the Skin that day, and you'll just do it forever.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
And by the end of it, I would turn it into this movie was made for me, and it's about having to not watch Under the Skin.
It's about salvation.
Yeah.
That was the part of the Bible he got to. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.